Hi, Shiraz. So, what advice would you give to new graduate students who are trying to choose an advisor?
Something I will tell people, like for those who are, let's say, choosing it, like you've come to grad school and you are going to choose an advisor or you are coming to join a lab, I
Mhm.
would say the most important thing I wouldn't say it's like your passion. Okay. So perhaps you are interested in organic chemistry, okay, but once you are in organic chemistry, your biggest priority should now not just be maybe the niche research area, but it should be the person you are working with. I think this is very important. And many people say that it's the most consequential decisions you can make in your graduate school, the person you decide to work with. Once you choose a good professor, then you probably have a good experience. If you end up with a bad one, then probably this is going to be like, I mean, I've seen people jump like colleagues. I've seen them jump from like since we moved here, three schools. And then there are colleagues that I know that started graduate school before us and they have jumped to different schools and now they are even starting PhD for the first year again just because they made the mistakes of joining the wrong supervisors. So this is very important. Don't just come with the mindset, okay, I see that this professor has a lot of funding, he has a lot of money, so I have to work with him. Funding is important, but how do you feel working with that person? And I know this is hard to decide. You cannot just know this by looking at that person. And sometimes you talk to the lab mates and just to see the feel of the environment or the situation in the lab.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I think it is also just that there's a little bit of luck in it, and because you cannot just know people outright, but you just have to gauge it. And based on your few interactions with the person, if you can read them very well, then you can decide that, well, this is someone that I can relate with. Now, if you cannot just make this decision or just make this um, like find out this just by talking to the person and seeing their smile or how they respond to you, I think the best thing is to just be like blunt and ask the right questions. Like, what do you expect of your students? How many papers do you expect them to publish?
Mhm.
And how do you want them to show up in the lab?
What
Like,
time?
they come in early in the morning.
How long do
How
they have to
long do they
stay?
stay? Do they work on weekends? Or are they just looking for progress on the work that they've given you to do?
Right.
This is very important if you are coming out to start in graduate school. And I would say I was lucky, and so for any much of the progress I've made, I would say it can be attributed to having selected a good advisor, and our personalities seem to match, so um, it makes things easier. Yeah.
Right. So, about that, I mean, you mentioned a couple of steps which I took note of. You mentioned the fact that you need to choose an advisor, which is very important. Your passion is also very important as well. But one thing I want to know is like in choosing, for instance, an advisor, right? Um, how what are the strategies that you used, right, to figure out what kind of advisor you wanted to work with? I know some advisors like to work with you one on one, like for instance, almost every day or every 3 days, he wants to monitor you to work with you. And then there are some advisors that leave you to do your own kind of work, right? I mean, how were you able to figure out an advisor that works best with you?
Okay. So when we come in our department, for example, when we come, we are allowed to do some rotations around and then see the feel of the labs. But um the labs that I actually had intentions of joining, I rotated, and for most of those that I rotated, I wasn't really interested. It was just one of them that was I was really interested in. And but what I found was that, I mean, this professor was also teaching a course that I was taking, and then I was like, well, this is a very interesting field, but it looks like I still have a lot of learning curve to do if I want to do well in this field. And I decided that, well, it also looks like a lot of students want to join this lab. Okay, what are my chances of him choosing me? Okay, and so I had to consider other options. So I decided to look at other avenues, other professors in the department. So there was a graduate research symposium. I went there, and then I was listening to the professor, the research of the various groups, and then I came to um, this professor who was presenting the research from his group, and then it was all smiles, just laughing. And then when I asked him a question, it's like, good question, and great. And then he was like, the enthusiasm, the way he's answering the question, then you see that this guy, even if he's not interested in me, at least he's very interested in his research. Okay, so maybe if I love his research like he loves it, then we will be okay with each other. Okay, so I told him that, well, I'm going to come and talk to you in your lab, in your office after this. Then I went to talk to him, and um, he was just a very nice person. Like, you could just see it oozing out of him. You ask him a question, it's not going to make it look like, oh, this is something you should know. He will not just answer it like an expect way, like, well, I know it, so I'll just tell you what it is. He would try to actually bring in the basics and just explain it. Then you see that this person is really interested in making you understand what is going on. So I was like, I think that I would want to work with this guy. And apart from that, the things he was doing also looked cool. And was my first time seeing it. I mean, I'd never thought of working in that direction. Like, when I was, for example, in the college, whenever NMR was not one of my favorite subjects, not at all. But his research was based on this concept of NMR. So just talking to him and seeing that he was nice, I decided, well, this person is going to be someone, maybe let me add him to my list of options that I want to work with. And so I just decided to come around, look at what he's doing in his lab. And then the people in the lab, I talked to them, and then they were like, you wouldn't hear a negative thing. I mean, negative stuff, you would not. None, all of them were praises of him. So I was like, well, they all like him like this, I'm also gonna like him. So I just decided that, okay, this is the lab I'm going to join. So I made up my mind, and I have never looked back. Yeah.
Great.